I gotta put a tie on. Oh my gosh.
You're live, Ken. Better be careful now.
It's okay. You can tell all the participants that if they don't have a tie on, they're in trouble. Okay, good. You got that up to your sharing?
Yep. So are you going to switch to your slides, Ken, and then I'll switch back when we hand over?
And they are all in one package now, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, you can just shout next. I can go through.
Okay, hang on a sec. Let me see if I can do that. Oh, I can't share my screen. Nope, still can't share my screen.
Yanni, can you change the security settings so Ken can share his screen, please?
Well, somebody else is sharing the screen, so.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay, I will stop share. There we go. Morning, everybody, or afternoon, everybody. Welcome. So we've got people flooding in. Good to see. Just pop in the chat box where you're from. Sorry for the background and to and froing between Ken and I. I think we've got ourselves sorted out now. So yeah, where are you from? Be interesting to see if how good a spread across the African continent we have today.
Oh, we got a Canadian.
No way.
Phyllis Bourne. Good day, Phyllis. I'm also Canadian, but displaced.
Pretoria, South Africa, fantastic. Oh, we must have Kenya. Let's have Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, somewhere. Kenya, good. Glad we got a Zimbabwe representative. Fabulous, fabulous.
Very nice.
Love it. So there's still a few people coming in. Yeah, apologies for being a couple of minutes late. Just having a couple of technical problems, which hopefully we've resolved now. Bertie Ruluru, that sounds like a familiar name. Welcome, Bertie. Carla, welcome. Leon, just trying to think of people whose names ring a bell. Okay, we've got Namibia, Joburg, Cape Town, Kenya, Canada, Middleburg, Harare, Zimbabwe. Where else we got? Pretoria. Awesome, awesome. So just for those of you just joined, just pop where you are currently in your chat box so we can just get all excited about this eclectic group of people we have in the room today. Right, I think the participants slowed down a bit, so let's get into it. So what we wanted to talk about was coaches and mentors. So two sides. Ken will be talking about his experience with coaching in general. So I'm just going to give you a short bio in a second, and I'll be talking a little bit more about the sort of mentoring side and how it fits in with a board process. And between the two of us, we'll be talking about the sort of business growth journey and phases that you go through and where mentors, coaches, boards, etc. Start to become important. So as an introduction to my illustrious co-presenter today, so Ken, an athlete, an author, an educator, world champion Olympic ice hockey coach. Performance coaching in sports led him to develop a pioneering way of looking at high performance coaching in companies and for executive teams. And over the last 20 years, Ken has worked with multiple global firms and executives to develop and enhance their success matrix. So use this opportunity, ask questions, dig into this amazing experience that Ken's got. He's researched, published, studied and taught social psychology of performance, human kinetics. He's busy studying kinesiology. Initially, he studied politics and economics. So we've got a broad cross-section of skills, abilities, experience in Ken Tyler that we need to dig into, and the company he's from is NEDx. And then for myself, if those of you who haven't met me, I'm a senior partner at Sirdar, one of the co-founders of Sirdar South Africa. I've been in this board game, I guess, since 2013 as a full-time role. And what Sirdar does is help build effective boards. That's what we do full time. That's the main focus of everything we do. So that's my piece of the contribution today, I guess, is how does all of this mentoring coaching fit in, and where is it best to start to think about using one or other, especially as you move into the space where you need a board and you want to make it more effective. And as individuals and executive team, how do you make yourselves more effective? So without further ado, Ken, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the illustrious invitation to come on board and share the platform with you. The combination of your board solutions and the coaching option is very powerful. We can take you, especially in the situation we're looking at here, we can take you on an individual journey of self-enhancement and performance enhancement and gaining of insight, whilst looking at the board education programs and solutions that you have at Sirdar. So it's a really nice combination to take a look at and to see how that can help people do as well as they can do as a NED when they come on board to an advisory board. We're going to start off with the audience answering this question. When you're in business, you have various phases that you go through, from startup right through to corporation and corporate success. And you have issues and challenges at each one of them, crises, in fact, at each one of them. And what we've done here is we put together a 5-phase cross-section of that, going from the startup where you're in creativity mode, to direction, to delegation where you're getting bigger, to coordination where you're getting much bigger, and to collaboration where you're quite a bit larger. You can see the business side on the one side, and you can see the evolution or stages of growth on the other axis. And in each one, as you can see in red, there's a crisis that can happen. Crisis of leadership from the founder starter, to crisis of autonomy as you start moving up in accelerating growth, to crises of control as it gets bigger than what one person can manage, to crisis of red tape as you get your systems, processes, and departments and whatnot built up. Where are you and why in your business? And how do we want to get them to answer that, Tim?
Yeah, I think just type it in the chat box. So
Okay.
Where are you? Are you crisis of leadership, crisis of autonomy? Or if you're not quite sure which crisis you've hit, what does it feel like in terms of phase? Are you all about the creativity of the founder? You're starting to get a little bit more direction put into the organization, so you're not doing it all by yourself? Or have you reached the stage where you're delegating everything effectively and properly?
There we go. Bertie's got an answer. He's at court. He or she is at Bertie Liverpool. Okay, so
yeah, coordination.
Coordination. Okay, so it's a crisis of control and how to manage that. Okay. Anybody else? Crisis of control.
Creativity, crisis of control. So we've got a bit of a range going here, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Phyllis.
Anybody else?
Vangani. Okay, well, you've got 3 you can work with at least.
We can work with. That's right.
So let's just
but
go through.
In each case, that it presents as you go up the ladder. The one thing that's clear, especially if you're in a leadership role, you're on your own, and you will have people that you're working with or working for you, or that you're working for. But who do you get to talk to who's in your corner and hasn't got an agenda? Well, that's where the coaching comes in. And as you go through the various crises, you have different approaches that you can use coaches to help you in your corner, do some brainstorming, do some strategizing, do some deeper thinking, help you adapt the skills and competencies that you need to have to tackle the next level, the next phase. Have you used a coach? And if you have, tell us the value you got out of it. And if you haven't, how do you see a coach being able to bring value to you? Any ideas on that? And if you don't know, just put in DK. We'll give you a couple minutes to go on that. And as we go through, we'll talk to you about the secret sauce of coaching. So I started it off already. Coach would be an impartial. Yeah, thank you very much. In fact, the coach is in the corner, not so impartial because they're in your corner. And that's the key factor. You've got somebody who's your strategic thinking partner who can help you get through those various crises. And the approach that we take is talking to you about being master of your fate and captain of your soul as you cross those various thresholds and what that means in terms of where you personally are at, but also you professionally are at within the role that you're playing in your organization. A lot of what happens here, we work through the 6 P's of performers and producers. And I'm going to go into depth with respect to that, but that's how we split that up in terms of making sure through the coaching programming that we have clarity on your purpose. We understand how you work with your people, from communication to conflict management to performance orientations. We are clear on how you get to root cause problem solving. And we work through pathways, progress. And my favorite is party. The party is celebration of successes and recognition of achievements. That's what the party is. That is actually the fastest way to create cultural change in your organization. The other key factor that we deal with is you as a leader may be conscious of certain things, but there's probably about 95% of the things that you do as a leader and that you develop in your organization that is unconscious. And we delve into that in terms of helping you enhance your systemic intelligence with respect to what's blocking you at the level that you're at right now. Okay. And the key aspect of that is to understand that you may not see why you are at that phase that you're in right now, and to be able to address that by becoming conscious about it. If you're not conscious about it, it will become your fate. And of course, my favorite, going down the rabbit hole, Alice asks the cat, which road should I take? In reply, the cat says, where are you going? And to that, Alice answers, I don't know. Then it really doesn't matter which road you take, says the cat. Okay, so a coach is a little bit like that. If you don't know where you're going, then okay, we can talk about that. But if you need to know where you're going, then we need to know why you want to go where you want to go and what it is you'd like to achieve. In order to do that, we get into levels of coaching needs, linking the needs, the objectives, and the evaluations of the coaching back to exactly those kind of questions. Where do you want to go? And we have 5 levels there as well in terms of the type of coaching objectives that we set in order for you to get the kind of return on investment of the coaching that you'd like to have. This is quite related to the Kirkpatrick evaluation, levels of evaluation, if you know what those are. And if you don't, let me just go through them quickly. You're going from getting satisfaction and setting up of objectives and going away from a coaching program where you've got a planned action. That's the first level 1, starting at the bottom. You may need to learn new skills and knowledges. And so we start with that and help you develop the knowledge, skills, and attitudes, hence competencies. There may be a need for performance enhancement in the performance or the role that you're taking on, or the role that has changed as you go from stage to stage, phase to phase. And we take a look at how you're implementing behavioral change and progress on the job with the change in approach that you're taking in the role performance. Then the 4th one is business needs, taking a look at the impact that the coaching has on the actual business itself. So we've got to set up the KPIs for the business in terms of what we're attacking in the coaching program to help you as the business leader achieve those business results. Okay, and the final one is to take a look at the cost of the coaching itself versus the benefit that the organization gets from it. Those are the 5 levels that we take a look at when we sit down and develop a coaching program. That's the kind of thing we go through to establish the kind of coaching that you need. Okay. The approach that we take is EQ plus IQ plus SQ. And not going too deeply into it, we start with the IQ, and we had one Canadian in there, and anybody from the Northern Hemisphere will know what an Niekerk is. It was a symbol of the 2010 Olympics in Canada, but it's a group of rocks that have been piled one upon the other, all interdependent, else it would fall down. And it shows you the way. It's done in the northern area of Canada by the Inuit and Eskimo people. And it's been famously represented through the icon that it became through the Canadian Olympics. So what that represents for us are big rocks. We set your big rocks, and we talk about the most important thing and the must-win battles. And that's where we start. Then we go to EQ. We're a strong believer that your purpose is based on the emotional environment that you would like to generate in your organization, starting with yourself. And so we measure that, and we plan out a program in order to start establishing that through positive psychology. And then through SQ, the life force that flows through you and your organization, you start getting back into that unconscious aspect of it, and you start addressing the deeper purpose for what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. So some of the big rocks are these. And there we start looking at what you feel that you're quite good at, what your strengths are. We do an assessment and help you understand where you're strong and how to take advantage of that, and where you may be weak and how to manage that by bringing people onto your team that have those strengths, by managing them so that you don't fail because you don't have those as strengths, or by ignoring them because you're so darn good at what you do. And you're going to be successful because of what you're doing now that you're so very good at. So there's a number of ways that we deal with weaknesses, but the main thing that we do through our coaching is we focus on the strengths. Okay, and then the other thing that we do is we work on the burning issues. And in the burning issues, we typically have things such as you see in these cartoons: bottlenecks, hotspots, disconnects, or breakdowns. And we identify them. They're all what get in the way of the goals that you've set through the big rocks. Okay, so that sort of explains our approach that we have in our coaching. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Tim.
So I just want to check you can still hear me, because I had a problem with my microphone earlier. Good, excellent. Let's just share screen. Cool. So by way of sort of introducing the other concepts that I want to talk about, which is related to the business, just wanted to go through a couple of the sort of foundational aspects, which are really important in this conversation about coaching, mentoring, whether you have an advisory board or a full-blown board, etc. So the first thing first concept I wanted to get across, and I'd be interested to see from those of you in the chat box, which you think you are, is this concept of a craft versus an enterprise. And often, if not most times, businesses start with a craft mindset and a craft construct, which is very much like this little food stand. It's one or two of you, the founder of the business, you're getting this thing going, you're working out whether this product or service has any legs, whether it's got a market big enough to sustain you, etc. But that mindset can continue for years, where it's very much about the creativity of the founder. We've touched on that word before. The ability of the founder to sell the product or do whatever their particular technical skill is. But often it's still the founder that's making the majority of decisions. So it's all about them. Whereas the enterprise is very different because it's all about a team. So it's no longer about the individual. It's no longer reliant on individuals. And if you take individuals out of the organization, yes, it may take a bit of a dip, but it's not going to collapse completely because it's not individuals doing all of the work. So we're saying that a craftsman is about your own knowledge, utilizing your own knowledge in your craft, so developing your skills, your abilities, bringing in a group of people below you to help and support you to deliver better. But in other words, you're owning a job. It's not a business. Whereas an enterprise is very much more of working together with a team, generally larger, but it can also, the mindset of being an enterprise can actually start when the business is still quite small. And one of the key things that we look for is, what is the next person you employ? So if you've got two founders, for example, who started this thing, do you bring in someone who's better at doing one aspect of the operations? Or do you tend to bring in someone that's just going to give you more time so you can do more whatever you do? May or may not happen the first one, because you might just bring an admin clerk and that's what you absolutely need to get the job done. But when you start getting into the marketing, do you bring in the best person you can possibly find, who may even be earning more than you're earning, to do the marketing? Or do we try and do it ourselves and learn how to do it ourselves? That's what I mean by the difference between a craft and an enterprise. So an enterprise is nothing to do with you. You should be able to remove the founder, remove at least one of the key persons in that organization, and it should be able to continue, because it's all about a team. The game rules are different. So like rugby versus golf, for example. An enterprise is a rugby team, whereas a craft is much more like a golf or tennis. It's separate and distinct from you. And the big thing is it requires shareholders, directors, and managers. So what I'm sort of getting at is, if you understand that your business is moving towards the space where it's really thinking and acting like an enterprise, then a board makes sense. If your business is very much about the owner's individual creativity, the founder's individual creativity, and you're living this thing and developing this thing as a craft, then you're going to benefit far more from something like coaching, maybe mentoring, but a board is just, it's the wrong tool for the business you're building. So I'd just be very interested, even if it's just 2 or 3 of you, to just chat, throw in the chat box whether you think you are in that craft mindset, craft phase, or whether you are moving towards or already in that space of being an enterprise. So just the word craft or enterprise, just to sort of get a sense of who we've got in the room. Great, Phyllis, thank you. Enterprise, good. So you will definitely benefit from as we go through the phases in a little bit more detail, which Ken touched on earlier. Bertie, enterprise, I would expect someone in, yes, absolutely. I would expect someone in your phase that you gave us earlier, that hopefully that's an enterprise, otherwise you're in trouble. Great, good. At least we've got a selection. So the other piece is, what do we think of as coaching? And Ken and I spent a lot of time trying to work out what the right words were for this. So involves the belief that every individual has the answer to their own problem. So it's trying to dig the solution out of you. If you can see the problem, then the chances are there's the potential to unlock the answer from within yourself. And it's for focus much more on the individual, and then the individuals in a team, and then how you impact the organization as a whole. So it's this piece of, if I can get my cursor to work, it's not a subject expert. So in the board context, what we're looking for is, in a coach, bringing in a coach into organization, it's to work with the individual. They're not a subject expert. Whereas when we bring in the non-exec directors, when we start to build a board, etc., now we're looking much more about someone who's going to be able to mentor, who's going to be able to help lead you as a leadership team and as leadership individuals to the next level, because I've been there before. And when we look at the phases, it's important to understand you should be bringing in someone that's only 1 or 2 phases ahead of where you currently are, because if they're in phase 5 and they've been dealing with a huge corporation, they're going to really struggle to deal with a business that's at creativity or struggling to delegate, because they're used to having so many tools available to get things done. So it's really important to understand where you are on these phases. And then we're looking to start to build a board and start to bring in that mentor influence and having access to people that can potentially be mentors. Then you need to make sure that they're only 1 or 2 levels, 1 or 2 phases above you, because it's just too big a gap. It's too big a chasm for you to leap across. So it's working together. Mentoring is about working together with the individuals towards a common goal. So which is perfect in a board environment, in a formal board environment. Particularly, you want it to be a team that are helping and support each other to make sure the organization can move forward and grow and become more profitable, etc., etc. Advisory board is much more about, I suppose, not so much coaching, but it's an advisor. So I'm giving you advice. We use the analogy of EO, YPO brainstorming process. I'm not giving you advice, but I'm giving you a whole bunch of ideas that you can pick from. The important thing with an advisory board is that the advisory board should not, and effectively it transforms itself to a formal board as soon as it starts to make decisions. So it's about bringing people in who know more than you, who can mentor you, and then get their ideas, collect all the different ways of approaching the problem that you've thrown at that advisory board. Make notes, summarize them, come up with 3 or 4 or 5 options, and then go away and decide which of those options is the right one for you. As soon as you start making decisions in that room, then you start to blur the boundaries. It starts becoming a point where those individuals start to become legally liable for those decisions. It starts to be legally seen as a formal board rather than an advisory board. So that's a key understanding that I just wanted to get across. So a high performance board is about this rhythm, making decisions, holding the company accountable to a performance standard higher that's ever been held before, resulting in increased value, improved returns, etc. for shareholders and stakeholders. But it's that key point of holding the company accountable. So you can't, it's really difficult to do that from an advisory phase. You need to be in it. You need to be taking decisions and knowing and understanding that you are liable for the outcome. So you do it properly. You do it with care, skill, and diligence, as it says in the Companies Act. So what we just do in closing is a brief sort of translation of what Ken said in terms of coaching to what that phases look like and where we see the phases being the choice of advisory board, formal board, coach, or mentor fits. So if you're in that phase of creativity, and I notice there's a couple of you on the call, and there's a couple in that craft phase as well. So if you're in the creativity phase, it's generally where crafts live, because it's all about the creativity of the individuals. As soon as you start moving through that crisis of leadership, in other words, I can't do everything myself, I need to bring some other people in to help and support and manage pieces of the business, then you now need to give everybody in the team direction. So your focus has changed. Your focus has changed from coming up with all the ideas and telling everybody what to do to now working a little bit more as a team and working together to define the direction. So those are the sort of transition phases of craft moving towards enterprise. So it's in the first phase, coaching is critical because you as the founder or founders are what's holding the business back. If you can't get over yourself and look at the much, much bigger picture, build a promise for the organization that's way bigger than you, then the business is going to be held back. It's not going to be able to grow. And that's that key piece of enterprise should not be restricted and reliant on you. So if you can get out of the way, give the business the space, and that starts in your head, then give the business the space to expand, then it can move into that space of being an enterprise. Then it can move beyond and above you and maybe live generations longer than you do. But it's a critical phase of that creativity moving into direction through that crisis of leadership. Absolutely get a coach involved in your own development so that you can let go of things that are holding back and move forward into a new reality. And there's also quite a good space for an advisory board because it's a way of brainstorming. It's a way of coming up with ideas that you're really struggling to come up with yourself, a way of improving and increasing your creativity. So I hope that makes sense. Excuse me. So it's that direction, crisis of leadership, communication starts to fail, too big for the leader to be involved in everything. And then you start moving. The leader's still struggling to let go, but we're definitely handing over some other functional management. So that's what I say as advisory board, definitely consider coaching. And then you move into the next phase, which is very much more into the enterprise space. And then it becomes situational. So where are you in that continuum? Have you developed the executive team? We'll go through an example at the end, but one of the clients we've been working with, the founder had died and handed over to the son. The son did a lot of coaching, did a lot of training to develop themselves, but then the rest of the team needed to come with them. So it's moving into that space of now we're delegating everything. Now we can start thinking about a formal board, and a key focus and value of having a board is mentoring and supporting the CEO, MD. It's a part of the board which is often completely lacking. It's just way too distant, way too formal, way too tick box. If you've got a properly effective board, you're working as a team, and one of your key responsibilities is to help and support the CEO to be the best they can be. Your performance managing the CEO. So why not help and support them to grow? Give them the advice they need. Give look, we did this before. Let's just not waste time trying to make that same mistake. Let's try this first. And then we can come back and have another go if it doesn't work. But in my experience, just believe me, have faith. I've done this before. CEO, come with us on this journey and see if we can take it to the next level. So as I said, the advisory board, very much in the creativity phase. Now you're starting getting to the point where you've properly started to delegate things for the rest of the organization. Now you can have that level of conversation at a board level because you're already used to delegating things. So that's bit. So in summary, understand what stage you are at from a personal growth perspective. Is your personal development getting in the way of growing the organization? Understand what stage of growth your business is in. So is it creativity? Is it going through the delegation phase? Has it got to the point where it's solidly in the enterprise phase and now we're just talking about putting in more effective systems? And have coaches and mentors, but the when you need, which may vary over time. So what I'd like to do now is, for the rest of the, what have we got, 20, 25 minutes, Ken, let's bring you back. Let's bring you back. So what we've got, so I'll just put the slide up so you can all get a chance to read it, but whilst we talk about a few stories, but Ken has put together a couple of packages around coaching. We've had to think about which of the training courses would make most sense to get people up to the level where they understand what governance is about, what a board's about, what the difference is between a formal and an advisory board, et cetera, et cetera. And if there's anything else that you'd like us to help you with, then we'll put a poll up at the end to give you the opportunity to get a follow-up call or something. So Ken, what was the example you mentioned the other day about how coaching really helped transform the way a business operated?
Oh my goodness. I mean, that's what I've been doing for the last 20 odd years. So you'd have to tell me
Not
which
everyone, just one or two.
Which one were you talking to specifically? Can you recall?
No, my example was a family one. So if you've got a family business, I'm sure that'll help.
Yeah, without a question. In fact, right now I'm going through a number of those, and one major one is based on succession of what generation moving on or not, and the next generation wanting to move in. And we deal with that quite often. I've dealt with that quite often. It's a significant issue, which is quite different than when it's not a family business. And just working the dynamics between the individuals and the dynamics within the organization, plus the dynamics within the family, is critically important. They were getting stuck on how the transitions, the succession transitions that happened in the previous generations. And that was coming back to haunt them in this present generation. And it was making them look at black versus white solutions. And a part of what coaching does, and I think actually Phyllis put that into the chat, a part of what coaching can do with you is to simply brainstorm and help you see the multicolors of the rainbow and not just black and white. And so that's what we did. And we're right in the middle of this. So we're going forward with that right now and creating a little bit more color in terms of the options that they're looking forward to digging into more in order to find the best way forward to help the next generation evolve into stronger, newer level or higher level leadership, and the present generation move on into higher level leadership, but leadership at a different level. You're talking strategic business leadership for that generation who's moving on, and for the generations moving in, you're talking about business management and business leadership. And so you've got to take a look at where they're allocating their time, and then the type of competencies and strengths that they need to have in order to set up the leadership roles and responsibilities that they've got, and so they can take advantage of them and be able to be successful. In other words, you got to set them up for success. So one of the main things that I've had to do with family businesses is I've done with family businesses is help them recognize the strengths that they personally have
Okay, I was going to ask you, what's the difference between the individuals and then looking at the sort of team or the broader context?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with respect to that orientation, you take a look at your strengths, you take a look at the strengths of your team. I'm doing that right now as well. The behavioral profiles, and you indicate what the probabilities are of them being able to work together well, on a complementary basis because of what they bring to the table from their natural predisposed way of behaving, predisposed way of seeing the world and interacting with the world based on their strengths and their behavioral styles. That's a start. That's certainly a start of it. And we're going through that as well. And this particular family has a profile that interestingly enough goes from generation to generation, and it can be mapped over each generation, interestingly, which means that in order to build their team, they want to look at other people who can bring in other behavioral styles, other strengths to certain roles and responsibilities, so they can have complementary high-performing teams. A high-performing team doesn't necessarily, unless it's always the same kind of team, they don't necessarily always have all the same strengths. You may want to complement the strengths with other strengths in order to have a well-rounded team, and people can step up depending upon what the challenge is.
So in just talking through your example, I just wanted to bring it back to your slide of the different types of coaching, objective and evaluation. What would be the sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that you'd used in that journey?
That's a good question. Well, largely what we're doing here is we're at level 3. Okay, we're looking for changes with the leadership at the various generations. We're looking for the changes on the job, in the role, that we can measure for them so they can see the impact that it has. With respect to the next generation, we're working on skill knowledge acquisition, so that we're identifying where they need to learn based on their path, so that we can get them either into courses, or if it's self-learning or learning on the spot, get them into experiential sharing forums on the job with their peers and with their groups who are working together. So there's that. And then we're looking at the business impact in terms of identifying what they need to change in the business in order for them to, in one case, stay alive, in another case, grow and expand. And so we're looking at dealing with that too. So it varies quite a bit in terms of the actual coaching program that you have. And that's why it's really important to set the goals at the outset, the objectives at the outset, in order to understand how well you're moving forward. Coaching is action oriented. And that's the key factor in differentiation between coaching and consulting and psychotherapy or psychology. It's action oriented. I always like to say it's the coach will come to you and you're saying, or you come to a coach and you'll say, hey, I'd like to learn how to ride a bike. And you go to a psychologist, you ask the same thing, and you go to a consultant, you ask the same thing. You'll get 3 different answers. You start with a psychologist. Excuse me if anybody's I'm a psychologist. It's okay. I can beat up myself. And they'll say, well, riding a bike, if you've never done it, you're a little adverse to risk, and that you risk falling off, and that can cause great injury. And you've had that as you grew up. We should probably talk about what you've got to get over with respect to your relationship with your mother. So would you lie down on that couch and let's talk about it? The consultant will say, well, okay, what kind of biking do you want to do? Okay, good. You'll need a road bike. This is the radius of the pedals that you should have. These are the number of gears you should have. By the way, you got nice blue eyes, so let's make it a steely blue color as well. Here's the manual. If you need something more, give me a call. And if you talk to a coach, the coach says, you want to ride a bike? Okay, hop on. I'll run beside you until you can do it by yourself. Straightforward, action oriented. Let's get it going. That's
a really good example. Thank you. That's awesome. I can see all of those scenarios having played out, and maybe not the psychologist, but I can understand where that might come from.
Well, we like to poke a little bit of fun too.
Yeah, you got to laugh at ourselves. So an example I thought of, which I think I touched on before, was we've been working, well, I ended up as their chairman, but we'd been working with a company where it was very much founder-led. So they'd been massively successful, an incredibly successful business, founded by the father, been working there, I don't know how many, 20, 30 years, whatever it was. He got sick, and then the son was involved in the operations, but then like died before the handover had really happened. Now suddenly his son's in charge, having been very operationally involved, but not really involved in those big decisions. So now you've got multi tens of millions of turnover going through this organization, and suddenly you're going to have to get involved in really big and decisions that, if they go wrong, are going to have a massive impact on everyone in the organization. So I know he did some coaching, and I know he reached out to like YPO and various some other mentors, and did some training. He did our applied directorship program course to try and upskill himself. Well, what is the next step? What do I do? And how do I get into the sort of mindset of getting a board involved? Because I don't want to do this all on my own. It's just not what I want to do. And I don't think like that I want to make all the decisions, because I know I just don't have all the answers. So I've joined when he'd gone through that journey of self-development, expanding his fears, getting over his fears, expanding his perspective on what's possible for himself, but also starting to think about what's possible for the organization. And when we came in, he had at least clarity on what he was looking to achieve, which was massively valuable. But now you've got a board, and then you've got executives joining the board who've got no clue about anything to do with governance, anything to do with anything other than their operational role. And that takes time to work through. So they ended up having coaching, doing the applied directorship program, and upskilling themselves and following a mirror journey of their boss, until they got to the point where they were really starting to add value in the board meeting, really starting to get into the strategic conversations, and starting to act as mentors to people lower in the organization, so that when we had, guess what, the strategy session with all the executives who weren't on the board. No, they've never had the strategy conversation before. They have no idea how you approach it. So, but at least we had the 3 core executives who are executive directors who could guide them and work out where their strengths were, where their weaknesses were, and also fundamentally change their expectations of each of these different managers, because they were expecting them to understand strategy, expecting them to be able to contribute at that level. And the guys were going, whoa, that's well too much responsibility. I don't want to get involved.
Huge step, especially as you go through the phases, as to be able to get the person or the leader up to a strategic leadership level where the business is being led at that strategic level. Some of them, many of them do it instinctively, even as the founder, of course. But to bring that to a higher level and to start implementing a strategy, what I call a strategy management cycle, and then to the other part that came up in your examples were the separation between a non-exec board and an executive board, and when, in many cases, depending on the size of the company and the country, when that gets mixed up, especially when you're dealing with a family business, because then you've got several hats. You'll have the family business owners or shareholders. You'll have them coming in and talking about family, or talking about business, or talking about ownership at any one of those types of meetings. So one of the first things that I've had to do going into those kinds of situations is to help them understand, first of all, help them understand the kind of structure that they want to have in order to be able to understand which hat they've got on in which meeting. And then the next step is what you were referring to, help them implement a strategy management cycle that is a standardized annual process that helps them start mapping out the 1 to 3 to 5 to 8 years. But just starting with, that's the IQ that we talked about, starting with the process of setting your big rocks and understanding what's getting in the way of your big rocks, which are the burning issues that we talked to. And then the other part is when you have, you can intertwine all of this. You take the founder who's been the CEO or the managing director, whatever they are called, and they move up to chair, but
please don't do that.
They're still sticking their fingers in. And I always like to say, when you move to non-executive, you use your nose and not your fingers. So you can smell out.
It's really difficult when you move from CEO to chairman to not continue the tell. It's how do you shift from tell to ask quickly? Some people can do it, but it's quite rare to make that shift. So rather not put yourself in that situation. If you're as a CEO moving into the space of being non-executive, because you're the major shareholder, you want to be involved, you can think strategically. rather not be the chairman, because then you can contribute so much more effectively, because you can start to be involved in the whole conversation instead of trying to lead the meeting, which is an art itself.
And you brought it up earlier, Tim. When you hire your board members, your non-execs, and your execs, are you hiring them because they can do the job better than you? Are you hiring them to be a part of your team? And you basically still think, oh boy, I can do this faster and I can do it better. And I've done it for 20 odd years. So therefore, whoops, there go the fingers. Yeah. And that works at the exec level, but it works even more so at the advisory and the board level.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Let's just take a pause. Were there any questions, Jenny? Any questions in the question box? I haven't got the Q&A box open. But yeah, if you haven't put anything in the Q&A, put something in chat. Any questions, any burning issues, anything you're not understanding about what we've been saying. The other part of and you touched on it earlier, Ken, is that distinction of what the role is when you move up through the organization. So if you've got to the point where you're a really successful and effective CEO, it's then what? And the mistake, as you mentioned, is that often it becomes, it's even worse if it's CEO and the chairman, because now you know more about the operations than anyone else in that room by very nature. Now you're trying to control the meeting as well and make sure that everybody gets a voice, or not. You may have, because you don't want anyone else to have a voice, but it's in your power to make that decision.
Yeah.
And then worse than that, a lot of the chairman CEOs write the minutes. So their minutes end up so skewed towards their perspective, maybe nothing even similar to what everyone else in the room heard or thought had been decided. It's just a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Whereas as soon as you separate those out, bring the best chairman you can find in, who's the best chairman you can find, not marketing director and manager and whatever else. Yes, they might have a secondary skill they can bring to the party too, but make sure they're a damn good chairman. And then you can, as CEO, you can say, well, my contribution is what's going on in this room from an operational perspective and the way I think strategy needs to be adapted based on what's going on in operations.
Yeah.
So that often needs a lot of coaching for the CEO to say, guys, it's that conversation all over again. You've got to get out of your own way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big lesson. And if you've got CEO chair, you've already indicated that this is not going to be a truly a strong and functional board of advisors. It can be a type of advisory board, but it's also got some built-in handicaps, starting with the inability to be arm's length in order to best evaluate and give feedback to the CEO on their performance, and on their strategy, because you are doing that as well as doing the analysis. If you indeed do the analysis, if you get an organization like that, which I've had, I've worked with, then it's pretty clear that they aren't doing any performance evaluation for their top executive team, at least not directly through the board, which is, and it also indicates it's typically then a smaller company, an SME, going up to anywhere from what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 50 to 80, 100 mil max, depending on the type of business you're in. And they aren't quite there in understanding the benefits of a fiduciary board. And they may or may not have some semblance of an advisory board, and to understand what that does and how that differentiates from coaching, for example. All of that being said, that's a part of what a coach is meant to do for you, is to help you take a look at the environment and say, okay, what's missing? What do I need? How can I set up a support system for me and a guidance system for me and for my team that can help me move to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jenny, can you just put that poll up? So if anybody wants a follow-up call, Ken and I are both offering free consults, just a sort of discovery call to see if we can help you take next steps. Also, if you've got access to it, Jenny, to quickly put the link to the webinar we're running on Thursday on Chairman.
Sure, I'll put it on for you now.
So if anybody's interested in finding a little bit more about what my perspective, but also I've gathered perspectives from a few other people that I'll be bringing into the presentation. But we're talking at a webinar on Thursday about what we as Sirdar, I personally, from my personal experience, believe is really critical in terms of what you need to do, or what you need to learn, what you need to become to be a really good chairman. So if you're in that space, there's an opportunity for you to become a chairman. You're already a chairman, or you sitting on a board and you realize you haven't got the greatest chairman. In all of those situations, you'll probably get some benefit from joining the call on Thursday. I didn't put it on the poll list, but yeah, please drop a message in the chat. We'll pick it up afterwards. Just say chairman webinar or something, and we'll make sure you get the details. Otherwise, Jenny, I think
and the same. We actually met through the VIB Virtual Advisory Board Network. So if anybody's in there, do look forward to some of the webinars that we do there. And you mentioned EO and YPO. Yep. And you do some work with the EOers, and I'm doing quite a bit of work actually with the YPO organization, as well as another one which we didn't mention, which is Corporate Connections. So if anybody's involved in any of those, we'd be delighted to have you in any of the work that we do there, from webinars to coaching sessions to forum sessions.
Yep. So no, we try very hard to just do talks to whoever's interested. So we'll do talks, do webinars for various associations. I think we're doing one for the Namibian Society of Accountants. I did one recently for the Architects Society or Architects Association. So if you're part of an organization and you think either Ken or myself or both of us speaking at a webinar would be useful, then reach out. Happy to do that. And that's not something I charge for. Ken, I know, charges an absolute fortune, but we just do it as part of our way of giving back and helping to move people on this journey, because it's just so critical. If we carry on making the same mistakes over and over and over again, we're going to get the same results. And there's just too many boards, too many companies that have failed for governance reasons, or for the leader not understanding their own limitations and taking the business in the wrong direction. There's just so many examples of that. So if we can do anything to try and improve that situation, head people off at the pass, then we'll definitely try to do that.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? There's a couple of things that have come up here.
Nice quote, Carla. Thank you.
In the room, you're in the wrong room. Yes, thank you, Carla. Good mindset. Who else we got? Difference between board. Yeah, so is everybody clear? If anyone says, no, I'm not clear on the difference between advisory board and formal board, just say me or yes or something, and then we can maybe dig into that a little bit more. So just summarize, advisory is about, basically the distinction is advisory board does not make decisions. It gives advice. And as soon as it starts to make decisions, it can start to be seen legally as being a formal board, regardless of whether anyone's registered with CIPC or your local company's platform. They're seen as soon as they're involved in the strategy and making decisions that can impact the direction of the company, they're now formal directors. And that also applies to people in your organization. So yes, you've got a board, maybe you have or haven't got a board, but if you've got people in the organization who are in charge of significant portion of the costs or revenue of the business, they can be seen as public officers, which is the equivalent of a director. So they have all of the same roles and responsibilities as a full-blown registered director. So again, it's something else. Even if you don't have an advisory board, you need to look in the organization and just check that you aren't giving people that responsibility without the learning and understanding of what they're letting themselves in for.
Yeah, and Bertie, you put a comment in there, and I think I'm reading it correctly, that you're looking to break into becoming a non-executive director on a board. And certainly if that's the case, please do get in touch, because that's a part of the coaching programs that I certainly do, is to help people start a NED career or enhance the portfolio of NED positions that they have in their NED career. Okay, or further coaching you as a NED in the boards that you're in, including the boards themselves too.
Yeah, and if you're interested in our director network, which is if we come across any director positions either for one of our clients, or some people just advertise through the platform. We also give advice and have webinars for the directors on that network as well, about how to build a better LinkedIn profile and build a director profile, those kind of sort of simple tools to help make you more successful in your applications for directors. And please, join the director network. It's free. It's under the resources page, I think, on our website.
We've got a question
if you just tick the box, we'll send you the details as well.
We've got a question with Ali here. I think you've answered it actually. Who has the ultimate power, advisory or executive board?
Advisory board has no power.
Yes, exactly. And
whether one exists or not, if you've got one or more directors, they are effectively the formal board and they have ultimate power. So shareholders shouldn't be making decisions, otherwise they get seen as being directors. If you want to keep that limitation of liability, your PTY, your limited, whatever, to separate your assets as a shareholder from your assets as a business, then you need to be really clear on how you manage in those two relationships. But it should be the board that directors make decisions. And that's why I said it's really critical to understand, if you are effectively an executive team, but you're doing all of the functions of a formal board, whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, you are likely to be seen as being directors with all of those formal responsibilities of care, skill, and diligence, not conflict of interest, etc., because you are making decisions at that level. So that's why, as the organization gets bigger, you need to start separating out. Exco does up to this. This is the delegation or authority. That's where their authority stops.
Yeah.
CEO has this list of extra delegations of authority. Then it goes to the board. The board signs this off. And then it's the board's responsibility.
That's it. So and just to say at the start there, you talked about shareholders. Shareholders can be on the board, of course, but then they have the legal responsibility. Yeah, they have the legal and fiduciary responsibilities. Okay, and that's the board of directors, not advisory board. They wouldn't typically be on the advisory board if they're already shareholders. So
I do a lot of talks along the three hats. So if you go to our Sirdar YouTube page, there are multiple videos there. Pretty much everything I've done in the last while, apart from this one, funny enough, I've mentioned the three hats. And it's critical to understand which one you're wearing, when, and what the responsibilities are of each. Because you walk into a board meeting, you have to leave your operational hat and your shareholder hat at the door. You cannot come at a decision with those hats on. You absolutely must not. But if you don't understand what the difference is, then you're going to continually make that mistake. And that's often where problems occur, because we start talking, I'm the majority shareholder, therefore, but you're in a board meeting. Sorry, that doesn't count here. And I'm sure people have got plenty of local examples of where they've experienced those kind of words being said.
Yeah, very good.
You can look into apply your AEP program. Fantastic. I'm gonna give it a stab. Malishona. Is that right? I don't know. If we can help, get in touch. Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Ken.
Yes.
We've spoken to Bertie.
Never give up.
Yeah, look, I think generally, Bertie, I mean, your question is a good one, and just from the context of it's actually damn difficult to get into boards as a non-exec director because so few positions get advertised. So our recommendation is to treat it like a completely new career, as if you have zero experience, and you just need to phone people and send your CV, find out where their director rotations are coming. They're 3 years or 1 year or 2 years coming up, so you can then get in touch with them. And most importantly, be really clear on what your director experience looks like and have examples that you can talk about in an interview of where you've dealt with a situation with a director hat on. But it's just about network. It's just getting in there.
Yeah,
getting into something, even if it's the board of a charity. Yep. And if you can get on the board of a charity with other well-known directors in the board, at least then you can use them as references. Yeah. It's literally like starting a completely new career.
Well, and we'll go further. And the critical part of all that is is your network and your working of the network. 80 to 85% of the positions in boards in particular are because of the relationship that you have with somebody on that board or somebody recommending you to that board. So even though you have people, headhunters, for example, who do placements and whatnot, 80-85% of the placements are because you know somebody who knows you and they recommend you or they ask you to join their board. It's a little bit different for advisory boards, but not much. The advisory board, they may have worked with you or somebody else has worked with you, and they're a lot often you differentiate. And I coach people on that in terms of career development. Are you going to be an advisory board? Are you going to be an advisory board, an advisor on an advisory board? Are you going to be a consultant? Are you going to be a coach? Which is it going to be? And do they have a board of directors? And what's the difference? Do they have an advisor? Because some will have advisory, some will have board of directors, and some will have a mix of advisory board member and consultant. And you need to take a look at that. And what first of all, what kind of career you want to have, how much you want to put your fingers on what you're doing, meaning consultant versus advisor, okay, versus your nose. And then of course you want to look at the remuneration of it as well and decide which direction you want to go. Sometimes taking on a consulting job, if you're an advisor, a strategic advisor, sometimes doing the consulting is the best way for remuneration and also best way to have impact in that particular situation. On the other hand, if you want to do advisory roles, then you've got to make sure that you're not getting caught into a consulting type of program that they're hiring you up to do. That's not that easy because there's a lot of gray area there. Okay, we scare them off.
I just muted because there's 3 streamers that have just walked past this room, which were very loud. I can still hear them in the background. So time's up, Ken. Any last comment? Any last advice for our attendees who've given us time to be here?
Get in touch. Happy to discuss with you. Delighted to have you on the call. And Tim, interacting with you and bouncing the ball back and forth between the two of us has been lots of fun. This is the first time we've done that, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to do something like this again. It was really cool, and we'll sort out the technicalities before everyone else arrives this next time. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for spending your time with us. I know an hour of everybody's time is massively valuable and expensive, so we really appreciate the fact that you've donated that time to listen to us. We'll definitely follow up on all of the boxes that have been ticked. There's quite a few of people who've asked for discovery calls with myself and Ken and various other follow-ups. We'll make sure that they start happening as soon as we finish this call. And we look forward to engaging with you at further webinars, and we wish you all the best in your journey of being coached, mentored, or joining a formal board. So thank you very much indeed.
Or breaking through to your next level.
Breaking through to the next level. That's exactly it.
That's it.
Exactly it.
Okay.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye-bye.